The sun filters through the tall windows of a public library in San Francisco. Rows of books stretch endlessly. The rhythmic tapping of a keyboard breaks the silence. At a corner table sits a young man, calm, focused, and deliberate. A cup of coffee rests beside his laptop. His name is Ross Ulbricht. A flash of badges. The air shifts. Agent. Step away from the computer. Ross freezes, hands lifted. His laptop screen flickers. A browser open on the words, Silk Road Admin Console. FBI agent. Ross Ulbricht, you're under arrest. The metallic click of handcuffs seals one of the most extraordinary chapters in internet history. The man they had captured was known online as Dread Pirate Roberts. To some, he was a criminal. To others, a digital visionary. And to Ross himself, he was just a man chasing freedom. Part 1. The Dreamer. Ross grew up in Austin, Texas, a place filled with open skies and bigger ideas. He was a quiet, kind soul who loved science, nature, and philosophy. Even as a child, he questioned authority, why rules existed, and who decided what was right or wrong. He excelled in school, earned top grades, and developed a passion for physics. At the University of Texas, he dove into research and theories that sought to explain the universe. But Ross wasn't interested in just atoms and equations. He wanted to understand systems, human systems. What made people obey? What made societies function? After graduation, he continued his studies, pursuing a master's degree at Penn State. But academia didn't satisfy him. He felt trapped, another cog in a machine he didn't believe in. Friends described Ross as both gentle and idealistic. He believed in voluntary cooperation, that people could live peacefully without government force. He began reading libertarian thinkers like Ludwig von Mises and Murray Rothbard. In his personal journal, Ross wrote, "Ross, I want to use economics to abolish the use of force. I want to build a world where people are free to trade, to create, to live, guided only by voluntary choice." That belief, that freedom must come before control, would guide him down a path that changed everything. Part 2. The Spark. By 2010, Ross was searching for something, a purpose that matched his ideals. He tried various ventures, selling used books online, day trading, and even a short-lived video game project. Nothing clicked. Then, in early 2011, he stumbled upon two technologies that would ignite his imagination. The first was Bitcoin, a digital currency that operated without banks or governments. The second was Tor, an anonymous network that hid users' identities. Ross connected the dots. What if you combined the two? A place where anyone could buy or sell anything, free from regulation or oversight. Not to promote crime, but to prove that people could self-regulate through trust and reputation. He called his idea Silk Road, after the ancient trade routes that once connected civilizations through commerce. But this Silk Road would exist entirely online, invisible, decentralized, and unstoppable. Ross rented a small apartment in San Francisco and began teaching himself to code from scratch. He stayed up late nights, fueled by coffee and conviction. When the site finally launched in 2011, it was simple, a hidden marketplace accessible only through Tor. At first, the listings were small, handmade art, books, and legal herbs. But it didn't stay that way. Part 3. The Rise of Silk Road. Within weeks, Silk Road transformed. Users began posting drugs, marijuana, LSD, ecstasy, and offering shipping to anywhere in the world. Because payments were made in Bitcoin and identities hidden, no one could be traced. Ross watched traffic surge. Word spread quickly through online forums. The dark web had found its beating heart. Soon, there were thousands of listings. Buyers and sellers rated one another like eBay. Ross believed this was proof of his theory, a system where voluntary exchange replaced regulation. Ross to admin. This is what freedom looks like. People making their own choices. He saw himself not as a criminal, but as a social engineer, testing the limits of liberty. But others saw something far darker. News anchor. The FBI says a massive illegal drug marketplace known as Silk Road is operating in total secrecy. Millions of dollars are being exchanged weekly. By late 2012, Silk Road had processed hundreds of millions in transactions. It became a symbol of defiance, of innovation, of danger. Ross's online persona, Dread Pirate Roberts, grew into legend. He used it to communicate, post manifestos about freedom, and inspire followers. No one knew who he really was. And that anonymity gave him power, but it also made him a target. Part 4. The Hunt. As Silk Road's notoriety grew, law enforcement agencies around the world joined forces. The FBI, DEA, and IRS launched parallel investigations to track the mysterious Dread Pirate Roberts. But it was nearly impossible. Silk Road servers were hidden, its transactions encrypted, its users invisible. FBI agent. He was a ghost. Every time we closed in, he moved the servers, re-encrypted data, or wiped traces. But everyone makes a mistake eventually. That mistake came early, years before Silk Road gained fame. Investigators found an old programming forum post where someone had asked how to connect a web server to the Tor network. The post was signed with a real name, Ross Ulbricht. From there, the pieces began falling into place. Agents found connections between the timing of Silk Road's server activity and Ross's online presence. They tracked his movements, studying his habits. He often worked in public places, coffee shops, libraries, always with his laptop open. Meanwhile, Ross's digital empire was thriving, but so was his paranoia. He no longer trusted anyone. Ross, message to moderator, I'm stretched too thin. Every day I wake up afraid this will all come crashing down. To protect himself, he adopted multiple fake identities online. He communicated with moderators, coders, and vendors as if he were a team, when in reality, it was mostly just him. As the pressure mounted, Ross began to fear betrayal. Rumors spread that he had paid for hits on people who threatened to expose him, though none of those alleged murders were ever proven or carried out. The man who dreamed of peace and liberty was now drowning in secrecy and fear. And then, in 2013, the walls finally closed in. Part 5. The Fall. October 1st, 2013. A cool, crisp day in San Francisco. Ross Ulbricht walked into the Glen Park Library, his usual workspace. He carried a backpack, ordered a coffee, and sat at his favorite corner table. He opened his laptop, logged into Silk Road's admin console, and began transferring funds. Outside, a dozen federal agents surrounded the building. Inside, two undercover agents posed as a couple arguing loudly near Ross's table, a planned distraction. As Ross turned his head to look, another agent grabbed his laptop. Agent, hands off the keyboard. The screen froze, still open, logged in as Dread Pirate Roberts. They had him. Within hours, Ross's apartment was raided. Agents found hard drives, encryption keys, and a personal journal, a detailed account of every step he'd taken to build Silk Road. Ross, from journal, I know I've crossed a line. I can't stop now. The world needs this, even if it destroys me. The evidence was overwhelming. Bitcoin ledgers, chat logs, and Ross's own words tied him to the empire he created. That night, as news broke across the world, one headline captured the moment. Silk Road founder arrested. The dark web kingpin caught in San Francisco. Part 6. The Trial. The courtroom buzzed with energy. Cameras flashed. Reporters filled every seat. At the defense table, Ross sat quietly, wearing a suit, his hair trimmed. Across from him, federal prosecutors prepared to make an example out of him. Prosecutor. He was no mere bystander. He was the CEO of a global drug empire. He profited from addiction, crime, and chaos. The defense painted a different picture. Defense attorney. Ross Ulbricht didn't sell drugs. He created a website, an open platform for trade. He believed in freedom, not lawlessness. Throughout the trial, the courtroom was split. To some, Ross was a dangerous criminal who had exploited technology to spread harm. To others, he was a political prisoner, punished for believing in liberty. Prosecutors presented evidence: Bitcoin transactions, chat logs, and Ross's diary. They also accused him of authorizing violent acts, though the supposed victims were never harmed. Prosecutor: he ruled Silk Road like a kingpin. He made millions and thought he was untouchable. Ross, letter read aloud, I never wanted violence. I never wanted to hurt anyone. My dream was to give people freedom, but I see now that freedom without limits becomes chaos. After only 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict: guilty on all counts. Ross sat motionless as the verdict echoed through the courtroom. His parents wept quietly in the front row. The judge's final words were cold and decisive. Judge, what you built was not freedom. It was lawlessness. And you must face the consequences. Ross's sentence: 2 life sentences plus 40 years without parole. Gasps filled the room. It was one of the harshest sentences ever given for a nonviolent crime. As he was led away, Ross turned to his mother and whispered, Ross, don't give up on me. Part 7. Legacy. Within hours of Ross's arrest, Silk Road vanished. Its servers shut down, its accounts seized. But its blueprint survived. New markets rose in its place: Alphabay, Dream Market, Hansa, each learning from Silk Road's design, each harder to trace. Cybersecurity expert. Ross didn't just create a website. He changed the internet forever. He showed that anonymity and freedom can't be contained, and that terrified governments. In prison, Ross began writing essays and letters about liberty, nonviolence, and redemption. Ross, letter, I wanted to build a system of peace, a market that proved people could choose good without being forced. I never imagined it would cost me everything. Outside, his story sparked debate. Some called him a martyr for freedom. Others said his ideals were naive. Filmmakers, journalists, and activists began campaigns calling for clemency. Even some former law enforcement officers admitted the punishment was too severe. But the law didn't budge. Ross Ulbricht, once a free spirit with a dream of digital liberty, remains behind bars to this day. A decade later, the world Ross imagined still evolves. Cryptocurrencies thrive. Decentralized networks challenge authority. Yet the same freedoms that inspired Ross have also fueled new waves of crime, fraud, and exploitation. His story stands as a paradox, a warning, and a question. How much freedom should one person truly have? Where does liberty end and chaos begin? Ross, final words from a letter. The road to freedom is never easy. But even here behind bars, I still believe in it.